Imagine waking up one day and realizing you don't remember the last time you spent a full hour alone with your own thoughts. Not because your life is busy, not because you're surrounded by people, but because every time your mind tries to breathe, there's a vibration, a ping, a notification, a flash of light pulling you back into a world that never lets you go. This story starts with a boy named Kian, someone you might see on the street and think, he's fine, he's normal, he's like everyone else. But that was the problem. He was like everyone else, living a life constantly interrupted by a device he didn't even know he was worshiping. Every night he told himself the same lie. I'll just check for 1 minute. And every night, that 1 minute melted into an hour, then 2, and sometimes, until the sun began to rise. Kian didn't realize it, but he had stopped dreaming. Not metaphorically, literally. His brain wasn't entering deep sleep anymore. He wasn't resting. He wasn't thinking. He wasn't feeling. He was surviving on the dopamine drip of an endless scroll. He'd wake up tired, open his phone, and the cycle would start again. Before he even opened his eyes completely. But the moment everything changed began on a night he almost doesn't remember. He was lying in bed, headphones in, scrolling through perfect bodies, perfect vacations, perfect relationships, perfect smiles. People laughing, people achieving, people shining. But the strangest thing was happening. The more he watched them smile, the more he felt something tightening inside his chest. Something heavy, something dark, something he didn't want to admit. He started to feel like life was happening somewhere else, somewhere he wasn't invited. He switched from one app to the next. He didn't even know why. Every swipe was the same. Every video had the same empty taste. But he couldn't stop. His thumb moved faster than his brain could think. Hours passed. And then, for the first time, he looked up, not at his screen, but at his room, at the messy desk, at the unopened books, at the guitar he hadn't touched in a year, at the workout clothes still folded since January, at the wall where the paint was fading because sunlight hadn't touched it in weeks. And in that silent moment, Kian felt something he had forgotten existed. Reality. It was quiet. It was raw. It was uncomfortable. But it was real. He realized the world inside his phone was loud, colorful, edited, addictive, but completely empty. And the world around him, his real world, was fading because he wasn't living in it anymore. He didn't know it yet, but this was the moment his life would begin to change. Kian sat there in the dim light of his room, the glow of his phone still flickering beside him, but for the first time, he wasn't reaching for it. He just stared into the silence and felt something he hadn't felt in years. His own presence. But the silence didn't feel peaceful. It felt terrifying. Because when you stop drowning your mind in distractions, your demons finally rise to the surface. There were thoughts he had buried long ago, dreams he had abandoned, promises he broke to himself, failures he never processed, questions he never answered. It all came back, and suddenly, he understood why he always reached for his phone. Not because he was bored, not because he wanted entertainment, not because he loved social media. He reached for his phone because he couldn't stand being alone with himself. His phone wasn't a device. It was a shield, protecting him from the voice inside him that whispered, "You're not enough. You're falling behind. You should be better by now. You're wasting your life." Every scroll was a way to silence that voice. But tonight, There was nowhere left to run. Kian leaned back against the wall, and for the first time in a long time, he asked himself a question. What am I actually doing with my life? Not the life he showed online, not the life he pretended to have, but the real one, the quiet one, the one nobody sees. He realized he hadn't created anything meaningful in months. He hadn't learned anything new. He hadn't started anything. He hadn't finished anything. He was living inside a loop that made him feel busy but kept him empty. It was like being trapped in a room with 1,000 open doors, but choosing to stay because the glow of the screen was warm and easy and safe. But safe wasn't helping him grow. Safe wasn't helping him change. Safe wasn't helping him become the man he secretly wanted to be. And then came the moment that broke him. He opened his gallery to distract himself. Old pictures, old videos, old memories. And he found a video from 3 years ago. It was him, laughing, full of energy, talking about all the things he wanted to achieve. He was excited, hopeful, fearless. And Kian realized something heartbreaking. That version of him had believed he was capable of so much more than the version sitting in that room right now. He suddenly felt tears in his eyes. Not because he was sad, not because he was angry, but because he finally understood what he had been losing. He wasn't losing time. He wasn't losing productivity. He wasn't losing sleep. He was losing himself, his ambition, his potential, his curiosity, his confidence, his spark. He had traded all of it for the numb comfort of an algorithm that didn't care about him. Kian wiped his face and whispered something that barely escaped his lips. I don't want to live like this anymore. It wasn't a dramatic declaration. It wasn't a powerful statement. It wasn't a moment of movie-style heroism. It was quiet. It was fragile. It was real. And it was the first honest thing he had said to himself in a very long time. That night, Kian understood something that would change everything. You can scroll past millions of lives, but none of them will ever replace your own. And if you don't take control of your mind, your phone will take control of your future. Kian woke up the next morning with swollen eyes and a mind that felt heavier than usual. But for once, the weight didn't scare him. It felt honest. It felt real. It felt like the beginning of something he didn't fully understand yet. He reached for his phone out of habit. The same automatic movement he had done every day for the last 10 years. But this time, his hand stopped mid-air. He pulled it back slowly, as if touching the phone too soon would pull him back into the person he was trying to escape. He didn't know what change looked like. He didn't know how to start. He didn't have a plan. He just knew one thing. He couldn't continue living on autopilot. So he did something almost no one does anymore. He sat on the edge of his bed with nothing in his hands. No headphones. No notifications. No distractions. Just silence. For the first few minutes, his mind panicked. Thoughts attacked him from every direction. Regrets, fears, memories, insecurities. The silence was loud, uncomfortable, threatening. He almost reached for his phone again, not out of desire, but out of fear of hearing himself too clearly. But this time, he didn't run. He let the silence wash over him like cold water waking a sleeping soul. And in that stillness, something unexpected happened. He noticed tiny things he hadn't noticed in years. The sound of the wind outside, the faint vibration of cars passing in the distance, the warmth of sunlight slipping through the curtain, the feeling of his own breath, slow and alive. It was as if the world was reintroducing itself to him. And then, from the quiet corner of his mind, a memory surfaced. A small, almost forgotten dream he had when he was younger. A dream so simple and yet so powerful that it shook him more than any notification ever had. He remembered the promise he made to himself years ago. I want to build something that will outlive me. It didn't matter what. A business, a book, a body, a skill, a life worth being proud of. He just wanted to create something that wasn't digital, something real. But somewhere along the way, he traded that dream for the illusion of progress that scrolling gave him. Fake achievements, fake rewards, fake growth. Small dopamine hits that tricked him into believing he was doing something meaningful while he was actually doing nothing at all. Kian stood up slowly. He didn't feel powerful. He didn't feel motivated. He didn't feel reborn. He simply felt awake. Awake enough to notice how much he had been asleep. Awake enough to see the difference between living and existing. Awake enough to realize that the life he wanted was still waiting for him. But it wouldn't come to him through a screen. So he made a small decision. A practical one, a gentle one, a human one. He walked to his desk, removed his phone, and placed it inside the drawer. Not forever, not for a dramatic detox. Just for a few hours. He sat down, opened a notebook, and for the first time in a long, long time, he wrote. Not for likes, not for followers, not for attention, just for himself. As the pen moved across the page, he felt something warm growing in his chest. A feeling he had forgotten existed. Hope. Not the loud, motivational kind. Not the, I'll change my whole life today kind. But a quiet, steady hope. The kind that tells you it's not too late. You're not too far gone. You can still return to yourself. The sun outside grew brighter. The room felt different. Lighter. Warmer. And in that moment, Kian understood something he had been blind to for years. The world didn't become dull. He became numb. And now, he was waking up again. The next few days felt strange for Kian. Not perfect, not magical, not motivational video perfect, just different. He still felt the urge to reach for his phone. The muscle memory was strong, like a ghost of his old self, still trying to pull him back into the loop. But each time, he paused just long enough to remember why he started. He realized something important. Breaking an addiction is not about never being tempted. It's about choosing differently even when the temptation is strong. Every morning, he picked up his notebook before his phone. At first, the pages were messy. His thoughts felt tangled, his handwriting shaky. His mind didn't know how to think without a screen guiding it. But slowly, the fog began to lift. He started writing dreams again. Goals, ideas, questions he wanted to answer, skills he wanted to learn. It wasn't about being productive. It was about coming back to life. One evening, as he walked outside without his phone, he noticed something he had forgotten. The world is beautiful when you're actually present enough to see it. The sky was painted with colors he hadn't admired in years. The wind felt colder, but more real. People's faces had details he never noticed before. The tired eyes, the hopeful smiles, the tiny stories written in their expressions. For once, he wasn't living through a screen. He was living. And that's when the moment came. The moment that changed everything. He walked past a small cafe he used to visit years ago. The owner recognized him, smiled warmly, and said, "Haven't seen you in a long time. Where have you been?" Keon wanted to say, busy. But the truth hit him so hard that he couldn't lie. Where had he been? Scrolling, watching, comparing, distracting, escaping. He hadn't been busy. He had been gone, gone from his own life. He returned home that night with a quiet fire burning in his chest. A realization sharper than anything he had felt before. Life doesn't disappear suddenly. It fades slowly while you're staring at a screen thinking you have time. That night, Kian sat on the floor of his room, the same room where he once felt empty. But now something was different. He opened the drawer and took out his phone. He held it in his hand like someone finally understanding the weapon that wounded him. And he whispered to it, not in anger, not in hate, but in clarity. You don't control me anymore. It wasn't a declaration of war. It was a statement of freedom. He didn't delete his apps. He didn't break the phone. He didn't run away from technology. He simply took back what was his all along. His attention, his focus, his time, his life. And in that moment, something inside him unlocked. A truth we all know but rarely live. The value of life depends on where you place your attention. And your attention is the most expensive thing you own. Kian didn't become perfect overnight. He didn't transform into a superhero. He didn't suddenly master discipline or productivity. But he woke up, fully, completely, finally. And once a person wakes up, truly wakes up, they never go back to sleep the same way again. Because now he could see clearly. The world, his life, his dreams, himself. And suddenly, everything that once distracted him felt so small compared to the greatness he finally believed he could become. So, before you scroll away, before your fingers slip back into that familiar rhythm, just pause. Breathe. Ask yourself one honest question. Is this the life I want, or the life the algorithm wants for me? Because the truth is simple. No matter how deep you've fallen into distraction, no matter how long you've been lost in that endless glow, you can still take your life back. It starts with one choice. Not tomorrow. Not when things calm down. Not when I feel motivated. Now, right now. Turn your phone from your master into your tool. Turn your time from something that slips away into something you shape. Turn your mind from scattered and exhausted into focused and alive. Because the world doesn't change when the apps change. The world changes when you change. If you're ready to take that step, if you're ready to reclaim your attention, your peace, your purpose, then stay with me. We're building a community of people who want more from life than a screen can give. People who are hungry, driven, awake. And if you're one of them, you're exactly where you belong. Subscribe, and let's take our lives back together.